Sub-Saharan Africa, which is the poorest part of the world, is paying $25,000 every minute to northern creditors. Well, you could build a lot of schools, a lot of hospitals, you could make a lot of job creation if you were using $25,000 a minute differently from debt repayment. So there's this drain, and I think people don't understand that it is actually the South that is financing the North. If you look at the flows of money from north to south and then from south to north, what you find is that the South is financing the North to the tune of about $200 billion every year.
What causes global poverty? Why do countries in the Northern Hemisphere enjoy so much wealth, while over 1 billion people in the Southern Hemisphere live in slums on less than $1 a day, where one person, usually a child under 5, dies of starvation every 3.6 seconds? Many would say that these are questions too complicated to be answered, like trying to figure out why bad things happen in the world. It could be lack of education, lack of infrastructure, government corruption, disease, war, or any number of factors in any number of combinations. But in the documentary The End of Poverty, the cause of global poverty is made quite clear. It's us, meaning the countries of the Northern Hemisphere, which have been extracting wealth from the Southern Hemisphere for centuries. Or, as one expert puts it, they are poor because we are rich. The End of Poverty traces the roots of modern poverty back to 1492, when Europe began its brutal expansion into the Americas, seizing land, enslaving indigenous populations, and plundering their natural resources. Natural economies that had provided for people for millennia were replaced with monoculture plantations to produce raw materials for export. This forced the countries to become dependent on their colonial masters for things the land used to provide, like food and clothing. With slave labor and stolen natural resources, the countries of the global north were able to amass great wealth, which they used to fuel their growth and bankroll their industrial revolutions. That's why some say 1492 is the beginning of what we consider modern times, as well as the start of globalization. Slavery was later abolished, and colonized countries eventually regained their independence. The problem is that the exploitative system put in place by the colonizers remained, and with the native people having lost their land, wealth, knowledge, and culture, a wealthy European minority was simply replaced by a wealthy native minority. And with these newly independent countries illegally saddled with the debt of the colonizers, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, and the International Monetary Fund could essentially blackmail these countries into selling off their natural resources and letting foreign companies run wild in order to qualify for high-interest aid loans that would only plunge the countries deeper into debt. In essence, people went from being enslaved by a military colonial occupation to being enslaved by a free market economic one. The End of Poverty has interviews with a wide range of experts, including economists, authors, Nobel Prize winners, academics, government officials from countries suffering under globalization, and grassroots organizers trying to take their countries back from the corporations. In addition, the film spends a lot of time with those living in poverty, from Brazil to Kenya, where you can witness the truly shocking conditions so many are forced to live under by an economic system that can only function if hundreds of millions live in ridiculous, fatal squalor. Who's to blame for this crap state of affairs? According to experts in the film, just look in the mirror. While this system was created over 500 years ago, it's us in the Northern Hemisphere who still benefit from it and enable its survival. This rapacious system is what makes our products so cheap, by cheating the developing world on its labor and raw materials. It's this system that has made it so the US, with 5% of the world's population, is consuming 25% of the world's resources and creating 30% of its pollution. And it's this system that values growth for growth's sake and increasing profits no matter what the human or environmental cost that fuels the world economy. So what can we do about this? Unfortunately, The End of Poverty provides no quick and easy fixes, because there really aren't any. It's our economic system of individualistic, extreme free market, trickle-down capitalism that needs to change, if not for moral reasons, then because it simply isn't sustainable. If everyone in the world lived like Americans, we'd need 6 planet Earths to provide the resources, and by 2050 we'd need 30. To keep our system going the way it is will require more waste, more environmental destruction, more poverty, more oppression, and more needless death. And if we don't change the system on our own, it's going to be changed for us through climate change, resource wars, terrorism, violent uprisings, and economic crashes that'll make the current recession look like an episode of Glee. But you can't change the system unless you know what it does and how it works. And for that, The End of Poverty is required viewing. I'm Jonathan Kim, and this is a ReThink Review.